So in this part of the series, we are going to look at tuples. So as usual, I'll create a program and I'll call this tuples.py. So let's start off with some brief definition of what a tuple is. So I have two statements here, and the first one reads, a tuple is a collection of ordered data. So it's a collection of data like we saw in the list, and it is also ordered. So there are some similarities over there. But then a clear difference between a tuple and a list is the fact that the elements or items within a tuple cannot be changed. So we can declare a tuple. So let's say we have these numbers. Now, in order to declare a list, all we needed to do was to bring out the square brackets, and anything we type in here becomes a list. So this, can put a comment over here. This is a list. The case of a tuple, so let's try and differentiate the two. So we have number 1 over here. Now let's have another by name number 2. And number 2 is going to be a tuple. So I'm going to do this with the same entries or elements, but in this case, this is a tuple. So the difference between what we have on line 4 and what we have on line 5 is the fact that whilst lists are put in square bracket, tuples are put in parentheses or the curved brackets. So these are the clear distinction in terms of how they look, and Python is going to understand it that way. So we can actually do a print. We can print the data type of number 1, and I'll duplicate this. So I'll do a Shift Alt and a down arrow key, and I also do for number 2 as well. So if I'm to run this program, we are going to see that the first one was a list and the second one was a tuple. Now remember, as far as the list was concerned, or a list is concerned, let me comment these ones out. As far as a list is concerned, we can try and change things within a list. Okay, so we saw something like we can do some assignments. So we can do number 1 and pass in an index. So let's say at index 0, we want to change what we have at index 0. So we can do let's say 90. So we've assigned the number 90 to index 0. So if I'm to come here and print out number 1 as it is a list over here, we are going to see that now we have 92, 3, 4, 5. So we are clearly changing things in a list. We cannot do same for a tuple. So what we cannot do this. So this is a tuple, or the number 2 is a tuple. And if we try doing this, we are going to get an error. So if I'm to print this out or I'm to run this code, we get the error type tuple does not support item assignments. So we cannot change what we have in a tuple. In that same way, remember, and once again, let me comment these ones out. Remember, we had an instance where we could use the append and insert on a list. So for instance, on the list, we can do num1.append. So we call the append method and we pass in an object. So the object is going to be, let's say, 100. And if I'm to print out number 1, as we've appended it over here, now 100 is going to be added to the last item or the last index over here. So in this case, if I'm to run this program after saving it, we are going to see 1, 2, 3, 4, 500 because we've appended 100, or we've added the object 100 to the list. We cannot do same for number 2 because number 2 is a tuple. So if after doing these changes, if I'm to run this, we are going to see tuple object has no attribute append. Okay, so clearly we cannot mutate or we cannot change the elements within a tuple. But then there are some few things we can do. We can, of course, print out the tuple, which is num2, and this is getting a little bit messy, so let me clear this one out. And if I'm to print this, we are getting the tuple as we have over here. Now we can as well print num2 and pass in a particular index for which you want to print. So if you want to print the first item over here, that's going to be of index 0. So index 0 is going to be 1. So if I'm to print this out, you are getting 1 over here. Now we can also print, let me comment this one. We can also print the last index, and we can simply do a print of an index of -1. So if I'm to clear this one out and run this program, you see that we are printing the last item over here. So these ones we can do as far as tuples are concerned, but we cannot mutate or you cannot change elements within a tuple. Now, what I missed out in the last video was the fact that we can have a list of lists. So what we are going to see is we are going to nest a list within a list. We can have, let's say, a variable called metrics, and metrics is going to be a list of lists. So we bring out the bigger brackets, then inside it we can pass in 1, 2, 1, 2. So this is going to be the first list within the bigger list. Then we can also have, let's say, 3, 4. And if I'm to print out metrics, we are seeing this over here. So this is a list of lists. Now, if I'm to print out the type of metrics, because clearly we can do so, if I'm to print out the type of metrics, we are going to see that this is of a class list. Now, if I'm to print out, so over here, let me say I want to print out the type of metrics, but I want to print out that of the first index. Okay, so remember the first index we have over here is what we have here, and that's actually also a list. Okay, so if I'm to clear this, you can see that we have a bigger list, and within the bigger list we've nested other lists within. So if I'm to print this out, we have this also as a list. Now let's look at another example where we can have a tuple of tuples, or a list of tuples, or a tuple of lists. We can have things in so many ways. So let's say we have another one called number. Then for number, let's make number a list of tuples. So we can have, this is going to be a bigger bracket, which is going to be the list, and within the list is going to be a tuple. So we have this, and for instance, let's say we have 1, 2, 3. Then we can have another 4, 5, 6. Then remember, we have to separate them with a comma. Then we can have 7, 8, 9. All right, so we have this. Now let's print out number over here. And let me comment these ones out. Clear here as well. So if I'm to print number over here, we have this over here. Now if I'm to print out the data type of number, if I'm to print out the data type of number, we're going to see that yes, number is a list. Okay, because it is a list. The square bracket makes it a list. Now if I'm to print out number, but then I want to pass in the second index. So the second index is going to be 1 because the first index is 0. So I'm going to print this out, 4, 5, 6. So let me run this, and that's what you have over here. We have 4, 5, 6, and there's a tuple. Now I can as well, like I was trying to show you with the other example, I can print this one out. So this is going to be me printing out the data type of what we are grabbing as far as numbers are concerned, the first index. And if I'm to print this out, you can clearly see that with the last print statement, we are getting a tuple over here. And that's simply because number, as we have over here, or as we've declared over here, is a list of tuples. Now we can also do same for tuples of tuples or tuples of lists. So you can have, let's say you can have colors. And for colors, you can as well open it up this way. Then we can have list within. So let's say we can have some colors over here. So we have brown and yellow. Then you put out a comma over here. Then we can have red and blue. Then we can have, let's say, white, black. All right, so if I'm to save this, and I'm just going to change what we have over here. So you can print out colors over here, try and print out colors, everything that has to do with colors. So once again, let me clear this over here. So what we have over here is we have a tuple of list. Okay, so the first print statement is going to print out exactly what we have over here. Then the second print statement is also going to print out the data type of this entire thing. So we are going to see tuples over there, and we are going to grab the one with the first index, or the second index, I must say, or index 1, because the first index is 0. So with index 1 is going to be this, and we want to print the data type, which is actually going to be a list. So if I'm to run this, yes, we are going to have what we have over here, printing colors. Then we are printing the data type of colors, and it is a tuple because we are putting it in parentheses, and within it we have a list within. So we have a tuple of lists. All right, so we can work and be making those changes as well. But the key catch over here is the moment we have a tuple, then we cannot change things within a tuple. One of the things I would also want to show, which I'm quickly going to do that with this. So clearly, let me comment these ones out. So in some earlier videos, you saw me do unpacking. And unpacking is, let's say you have X, Y, and Z. You can unpack it to, let's say, 10, 20, and 30. What this line of code on line 8 is doing is actually the same as, let's say, writing X is equal to 10, Y is equal to 20, and Z is equal to 30. All right, so what we have on line 8, 9, and 10 is the same as what we have over here. And this is what we call multiple assignments or unpacking. So these are the values and these are the variables. Okay, so the values over here will unpack or will be assigned to the corresponding variables over here. So the first one will correspond, the first variable will correspond to the first value, the second variable will correspond to the second value, the third variable will correspond to the third value. And that's essentially what we have over here. We can do the same with lists and tuples for that matter. So let me clear these ones out. And for the purposes of this demonstration, let me just reduce this to 1, 2, 3. And let's say also reduce this to 1, 2, 3. All right, so what we can do here is I can declare variables, let's say X, Y, and Z, and assign it to number 1. Okay, so what we have over here, 1, 2, 3 within the list, I am unpacking it into these variables. So if I'm to print out X, let me check if that's the only print statement I have. Okay, clearly the others have been commented. So if I'm to run this program as we have over here, it is going to print out the value for X. So if I'm to run this, you are going to see 1 over here, and clearly that's what we are doing, because as far as this list is concerned, the first value we have over here will correspond to the first variable, which is 1 or X. You can also do a print statement for Y, and if I'm to print out Y or run this code, you are going to see 2 over here. Now, if by a stretch of some imagination we do this, what we have over here is there's some kind of unproportionality over here, okay, because we have 3 values, but then we are unpacking them into 2 variables. Now it's not going to work. So if you should run this, you are going to get errors over here. So, or too many values to unpack, expected 2. Okay, so these are the values, and it was only expecting 2 because the variables are only 2 over here. So we should be mindful when we are trying to unpack. We should make sure that the number of variables corresponds to exactly the number of values over here. We can do same for the tuples. So clearly what we've been doing over here is for the list. Okay, so let me change this to a very more or less different one. So let's say for colors, and let's use strange values over here. So you have black, you have red, and let's use blue. So after saving this, let me call colors over here. All right, so if I'm to print y over here is red, okay, because as far as this color tuple is concerned, after unpacking, this red will correspond to the second variable over here. So if I'm to clear this out and print it, we are going to see red over here. So basically, these are what tuples are and what we can do. Now, a very good candidate for using tuples is when maybe you have some kind of coordinates. So as far as coordinates are concerned, you would want to make sure that they don't change no matter where in your program. Okay, so that's because coordinates actually point to a specific direction, and a change in coordinates will definitely mean a change in some kind of location or direction. You wouldn't want to play around with those sensitive data, so you definitely have to put them in tuples.